401ks, tax returns, and all.
We're gonna move quick, and we're gonna keep cool.
My job, my score, get your own!
You are alone, you pathetic psychopath!
Suppose a group hug's out of the question. Yes!
I thought it was time to get you a new run.
Locking on. Got him.
Breath of the Wild could have easily blown up in Nintendo's face. Link no longer dons his distinctive green tunic and hat. Instead, he wears whatever the player wants. There are next to no cutscenes, and the ones that are there mostly take place in the past. The player can completely miss or skip crucial characters and details, but that's exactly why Breath of the Wild is special. In an age commonly criticized for hand-holding games that essentially play themselves, Breath of the Wild stands out as something unafraid to allow for key moments to be glossed over at the player's leisure, because it's making good on a 30-year-old promise. Breath of the Wild is a complete realization of the conceptual origins of the Legend of Zelda franchise. In all reality, it could even be called a 3D remake of the very first game. This game is a stark reminder that there are risks that have yet to be taken, that the old school still has some tricks up its sleeve, and can remain as relevant reminders of good game design. Breath of the Wild also serves as a tone setter for the console it launched on, the Switch. The game also came out on the Wii U, but the handheld capabilities of the Nintendo Switch lend themselves perfectly to Breath of the Wild, making it so even when you're away from your TV, you can still dive into some shrines. The minimalistic approach to its narrative and sound design might be a turnoff for some, but Breath of the Wild represents the ideology that no franchise should become complacent and rest on its laurels, that some risks are worth taking even if they come at a cost. This game signaled a bright future for Nintendo's legacy after Iwata's passing, and that legacy shows no signs of slowing down quite yet.
Here it comes!
You must save her, my daughter.
My first day as a member of the 501st. It was hot, it was sandy, chaotic. Nothing at all like the simulations on Camino. Of course, that's pretty much the way it was for all of us, wasn't it? All that breeding, all those years of training. It doesn't really prepare you for all the screaming or the blood, does it?
Star Wars was everything to me growing up. I grew up during the prequel age, and even though they aren't amazing movies, they got me into the franchise. I jumped onto the Battlefront 2 train after one of my friends came over with a copy one day. As a 9-year-old in love with Star Wars, this game was lethal. Day in, day out. If you can imagine the kind of time a 9-year-old has on their hands, then you'll understand the kind of playtime I was putting into Battlefront 2. I'd make these giant playlists in instant action, play through each one, think that was fun, and then do it again. Galactic Conquest was perfect for a kid like me who was easily amused by shooting away at AI battle droids for hours and hours. I never had any of the online PS2 stuff, so my experience was limited to playing alone or with a friend on the couch. Going back to this game, it's a bit rough, but it's easy to tell why it's revered so lovingly. The wide berth of content seemed nearly limitless, and the gameplay opportunities changed from match to match. Every map, every round presented new ways to immerse yourself in the world of Star Wars. It's also easy to see why I'd later become a huge fan of the Battlefield series. Battlefront 2, for all intents and purposes, was a Battlefield game with a Star Wars spin. I can love Battlefront 2 for providing hours of spectacle and amazement, and I can also love Battlefront 2 for influencing a lot of my tastes as I grew up.
As the rebels fled, the 501st gathered around a burning bunker and let out a cheer that shook the stars. The rebellion was done. The Death Star was being rebuilt bigger than ever. Order had finally returned to the galaxy, in no small part due to the efforts of the fighting men of the 501st.
This appears to be the work of the ultra-nationalists led by the Shadow of Zakhaev, one Vladimir Makarov. The Kremlin, however, sees it differently.
The Prime Minister has pledged full support to aid in any way possible.
Hans Zimmer did the score on this game, and if that doesn't make it apparent that the budget, the production, and all the glitz and glamour all belong to a Call of Duty game at the peak of the series' popularity, then maybe hearing Hollywood actors like Keith David and Lance Henriksen lend their voices to the game's characters will. At this point in the console generation, Call of Duty wrote the rules. It set the trends that other games followed. If it created controversy, the world knew. And boy, did the world know about No Russian. As controversial and messed up as that mission is, it's one of the reasons why I will always have a profound respect for Modern Warfare 2. Even at the top of the world, Infinity Ward wasn't afraid to take risks and push buttons. How crazy is that? Could you even imagine a developer like Epic Games or Blizzard trying something like that in this day and age? That's something Call of Duty was in a unique position for. Back when you felt like the emphasis was just as much on the campaign as it was on the multiplayer, when one side of the coin was just as triumphant as the other. The multiplayer still remains the king of the Call of Duty franchise, and while other entries would attempt to refine and perfect the formula set in motion by Call of Duty 4, Modern Warfare 2, while not perfect, stuck a solid mix between broken and fun. Akimbo 1886s are the epitome of the Modern Warfare 2 experience. The lack of balance in certain areas added to the charm and legacy of Modern Warfare 2's multiplayer. When this game was added to Xbox One's backwards compatibility list, I jumped on it as soon as I could, and so many other people did in fact that it actually cracked the top 10 bestsellers list that month, almost 1 decade after it first shook the world. That's the power of Modern Warfare 2.
Drop everything. Go home. Live your life. Or we can just end it right here.
There's gotta be another way. I need you on this one.
Naughty Dog is the kind of studio that can accomplish seemingly impossible tasks. Somehow, some way, Naughty Dog found a way to make a finale to Nathan Drake's iconic Uncharted journey, tell a self-contained story that doesn't entirely rely on knowledge of the previous entries, and keep the door open enough at the end for future expansion. Not only does Uncharted 4 have one of the best endings to anything ever, the game itself is one of the best endings to anything ever. Going in knowing that this was Nathan Drake's last ride added to the tension of every single set piece, and the context of previous entries added more and more weight to every single character moment. Every line of dialogue possesses so much depth in Uncharted 4, because each and every single line meant we were progressing toward the end. This game is the perfect treat for fans like me. It truly felt like this was an adventure that utilized everything Nate had learned and accomplished over the years, while still saving some surprises right up until the final moments. It's a testament to the strength of Neil Druckmann and Bruce Straley's directing talents. These guys go back to Uncharted 2, so they understand what will shock audiences more than anyone else. Uncharted 4 had a very tumultuous development cycle, so seeing all of the hard work pay off in a singular, incredible experience, there's nothing like it. I had kind of a slow burn with Uncharted 4. The impact didn't hit me until well after I beat it. The emotion, the passion, one day it hit me like a freight train, and it made me think about just how special the Uncharted franchise is to me, and just how masterful of a conclusion Uncharted 4 is.
Hey, here, take the wheel. What? Are you out of your goddamn mind? Yep, probably. Oh, shit. Yeah. Oh, crap, crap, crap.
Although I started with the PS2 original, it's the Vita exclusive Golden Edition of Persona 4 that really showed me what JRPGs can be. It hits you with a visual novel's worth of exposition in the early hours, but it's impossible to guess just how gripping and emotional Persona 4 Golden is at the outset. The entire game is representative of the small town experience and the feeling of moving to a new place. Just like the protagonist, we're a little cold and struggling to digest everything that's being thrown at us at the beginning. But as we settle into the adventure and get a grasp of all the different systems and mechanics at play, we start to warm up and let our guard down more and more. These characters legitimately had a place in my heart by the end, and it made certain moments excruciatingly painful while also having moments of complete elation and joy. Seeing the entire cast interact with each other is almost more fun than the dungeon crawling combat, even if it takes a while to get there. Persona 4 Golden has a wonderfully unique aesthetic too, and a catchy soundtrack, giving it an identity unlike anything else. Every single part of this game is unforgettable. It's a game that makes you think about real life and reevaluate some of the things going on in your head in such an intimate way that almost nothing else can replicate.
I need this for you. I guarantee that you will find this man.
Please, no more killing.
Don't do anything stupid, cousin!
Even though, on paper, Grand Theft Auto 5 should be the superior game, I'm not alone in thinking that GTA 4 is still the king of modern Grand Theft Auto games. In retrospect, it's a lot like the Yakuza games in the sense that it masterfully balances a lot of different tones while never betraying itself. The ragdoll physics are goofy and endearing, the multiplayer was simple but fun, the missions are diverse and satisfying, and all with a unifying plot structure with real stakes and investment. There's a real sense of darkness and melancholy that permeates throughout Nico's journey, and it really cements GTA 4 as a Grand Theft Auto game that has something for every kind of fan of this series. It might not have the meat and potatoes of other games in the series, but it is undoubtedly the one I've always had the most fun with, and it's one of the rare games I've purchased more than once, 3 times in fact. Is it a perfect game? No, but I don't think any game on this list is, or anyone else's list for that matter. Could its missions use some checkpoints? Yeah. Are the driving physics wonky? You betcha. But there's something very charming about a game with flaws that make the overall experience goofier and more entertaining. Just ask Bethesda.
I told you to be calm, you halted the jump!
Welcome to America.
Stop shooting people, you maniac!
Leave my people alone.
I ain't asking you, I'm telling you, do this!
Ready up. Let's do this.
Just as the simple move from World War II to a modern setting sent ripples throughout the gaming industry, so too did its revolutionary multiplayer. Call of Duty 4 is the real deal. It's like if someone from the future dropped an iPhone into Alexander Graham Bell's lap right after he invented the telephone. Just as online multiplayer was becoming a huge thing, boom! Call of Duty 4 introduces an RPG-like progression system with constant unlocks, perks, class customization, kill streaks, everything that would become standard issue in nearly every single multiplayer game following its release. However, I never got to experience any of this as it was happening. Even though Call of Duty 4 was the first game I owned on my PS3, my internet's NAT type didn't allow me to play online, so I was stuck with the campaign. And while I say I was stuck with it, I mean that lovingly. I was stuck on it because I couldn't tear myself away from it. Call of Duty 4 never stops being iconic, mission after mission. Even the tutorial is iconic. The tanker, the helicopters, the ghillie suit, the nuke. This game is among royalty in the FPS Hall of Fame. I love Call of Duty 4 so much, I even digitally pre-ordered Infinite Warfare's Legacy Edition just so I could have early access to Call of Duty 4 Remastered, even though it's technically a remake, and I platinumed it before it even officially released, an opportunity I never had with the original since Infinity Ward never patched in trophy support. That never mattered to me though, since I sunk dozens of hours into it even without the promise of trophies or achievements, because Call of Duty 4 is, simply put, a masterpiece.
Everyone, hang on!
From this cauldron of steel and sweat, a vision of prosperity emerged. Harnessing the untold power of the elements, turning night into day. Creating new designs that brought the world stage to the masses. And providing an experience that many had never imagined.
Turn-based strategy games aren't something I'd say I'm proficient at, and yet Civilization V made me wish I was. As a self-proclaimed student of history, I've always been partial to the ethos of Civilization. choosing a culture or country to represent, building it up from the beginning and cultivating it into a vast trade empire or a powerful military force. My earliest experience with this idea was through Civilization 4 and Revolution, but 5 is the game that really showed me how special and how deep Civilization can be. Civ 5 is complex enough to allow for some deep consideration put into every single turn, but simple enough for people like me who kinda just like clicking buttons and seeing things happen. That little snap sound effect when you click something is always a tiny little shot of dopamine, making the infamous one more turn mentality an even more present reality in 5 than in any game prior. The expansions of Civilization 5 made the game even better, adding fun and sorely missed mechanics like a fully customizable religion system and a higher focus on trading and diplomacy. The full package of Civilization 5 is truly remarkable, and I think its brilliance shines in the fact that I've even got some of my friends into this game, even though they were initially intimidated. A numbered Civ game can feel scary when looking in from the outside, but I'd encourage anyone who has the chance to jump in with both feet. For my money, Civ 5 is the best place to develop that never-ending itch for turn-based strategy.
Although mankind will always look onward, yearning for more, searching for new boundaries, only to break through them, with the understanding that this world is one in which we all share, comes the responsibility of knowing that the decisions you make today will have a lasting impact on the generations of tomorrow.
We are the lazy generation, no more standing out in line. So good at wasting our time. We are the lazy generation. We are the lazy generation. We are the lazy generation now.
The sense of motion and speed in a Burnout game is unlike any other racing game out there, and the cinematic destruction stemming from the game's takedown system only added to the chaotic white-knuckle action. The thing I remember more than almost anything else in Burnout 3 is the absolutely bewildering sound design, which completely envelops the player in the legendary licensed soundtrack and the impact of each collision. I think sound design is often overlooked in video games, considering it's one of the most important aspects in regards to player feedback. I wouldn't recommend it, but you could almost close your eyes while watching or playing Burnout 3 and still have an understanding of the things that are happening. You'd probably be in the wall or in last place, but the audio cues and the slams and the boosts all feel so clearly communicated, feeding the player the exact information they need to cut through the motion-blurred chaos of the road ahead of them. It's almost like playing as Superman. The player has to cut through all the noise and focus to succeed. I also really love how each track has its share of secrets to find, almost all of which rely on getting takedowns on opponents in certain ways and areas. I talked about this on a Need for Speed Underground 2 entry, but I think it's fair to mention once again how satisfying it is when a game or film or anything introduces a concept and squeezes as much as it can out of that idea. Where Underground 2 did that for open world racers and didn't quite get the entire job done, Burnout 3 does that for level-based arcade racers, and the highs have never been recreated since. Burnout 3's legacy has lived on for a long time, with traces of it even carrying over into its sister franchise Need for Speed, though to varying success. It's a shame that both Criterion and Burnout are essentially MIA, but I think a testament to how good Burnout 3 is lies in the fact that I'd honestly prefer a remaster of Burnout 3 over a reboot to the franchise any day of the week.
We are the lazy generation. We are the lazy generation. We are the lazy generation. We are the lazy generation now.
In their tongue, he is Dovahkiin, Dragonborn.
It's the myth, the meme, and the legend. Revisionist history hasn't treated Skyrim well in the 7 years since its launch in November of 2011, but my undying love for this game since then is honestly a little unsettling. Bethesda knows how to milk this game. I've owned 3 different copies of it, and every time I sink dozens and dozens of hours into it. Skyrim is a flawed game, sure, but I think it was the last time Bethesda could release a game with bugs and have it be considered quirky instead of broken. I never had any game-breaking bugs, but I did get sent to the stratosphere by a giant, and that's why I think Skyrim gets a bit of a pass. Even without thinking about the bugs, Skyrim does a great job of sucking the player into the world and immersing them into a high fantasy journey that ticks all of the right boxes. Dragons? Check. Wizard School? Check. Werewolves and vampires? Check. Vampire hunters? Also check. More than any other game in BGS's catalog, Skyrim presents more opportunity than ever to be the kind of character you want to be. Becoming a master blacksmith and crafting Daedric armor is a fun, satisfying goal. Maxing out stealth and pulling the wool over anyone's eyes is deviously fun. It's the growth and progression of Skyrim that set it apart. It's simpler than ever thanks to the awesome progression system that levels up as the player simply plays how they want to play. It encourages a natural experience that rewards the player for finding what playstyle suits them best. And as someone who doesn't care a ton for fantasy RPGs outside of a select few, Skyrim's world represents Elder Scrolls in an easily digestible way through dialogue, books, and environments, making it fun for someone like me and serving as a true embodiment of what it means to be an RPG.